enlightenment, knowledge, and truth.
It's all good. It's all good. I just want to let everyone know that we are here. This is, you're listening to Journeys with Rebecca, and I'm here in the heart of America. We are broadcasting live. We're heard right here on Revolution Radio at freedomslips.com Studio B. We're also being simulcast on wolfspiritradio.com and can be heard on journeyswithrebecca.com. This is your host, Rebecca Jernigan. You're listening to Journeys with Rebecca radio show, and welcome to Friday night show. And tonight happens to be Friday the 13th. Although I am not superstitious, I actually love these days. It can throw some kinks in the program. We'll talk a little bit about that later. But I have a couple of really fantastic guests, you guys. As a matter of fact, they're host on Revolution Radio themselves. I have Dr. Sasha Lesson and also Janet Lesson. And tonight they are here. The topic of this show was called Enki Speaks, and what it's going to be about is fire, the gods of hierarchy, war, slavery, and religion. And I'm going to kind of read some things that Janet sent to me today. The giant gods of the ancient world and the rulers they choose created mindsets that shackle us to short, desperate lives. These so-called gods rocketed to Iraq from a planet they called Nibiru. The Nibirans, who came to Earth, called themselves Anunnaki, which means those who descended to Earth from the sky. Now, both of them reveal the slavery and genocide the gods, our ET genitors, perpetrated. The truth we review in the Anunnaki Gods No More series, which is what they're here to talk about tonight, ends the power of lies of rulers to impoverish us. We see how the elite manipulate us to war, how the matrix they molded models us recklessly to exploit our resources and pollute our environment. They see that we've never feel our unity as a planet of peace. And, you know, I think that there is a whole lot to be said about that. Lies of church and state hide technology, knowledge of our ET heritage, and information about the Galactic Federation. That's all coming up right here tonight with the lessons. But first, let me give you some information. Please log on to the website, journeyswithrebecca.com, to check out the features and some of the updates that are there. Be sure to sign up for the newsletter. It's free. I send it out about once a week. My newsletter contained a whole bunch of information the last few weeks, which was what we were going to be talking about tonight with the lessons, as well as they're going to be here next week, and we'll also bring you up to date on that, on what the topics and what we're going to be covering next week. It's really going to be a ton of fun information and a lot of good substance to this tonight. Please remember that these radio stations are commercial free. They're listener supported. So please use the site support button at freedomslips.com or the donation button on wolfspiritradio.com. When you do that, it really helps because we do want to keep these stations commercial free, and we know that we have a lot of listeners out there, so every little bit does help. So we appreciate all the donations and the support that you do give to these two radio stations. And please, again, don't forget to sign up for the free and confidential newsletter at journeyswithrebecca.com. And right now I'm going to welcome Janet and Sasha Lesson to the show. Welcome, guys.
Aloha. Can you hear us?
You know, I can. You're a little low than what you were when we did our little test.
I'll turn this up a little bit more. There, how's that?
That's a little better. So, how is everyone over there in Hawaii? I think you're in Maui, is that correct?
We love it here. It's so beautiful.
Yes, well, it's a wonderful day in paradise. It's always warm, tropical breezes, sunshine, you know. We escaped the mainland and all that stuff that's coming. You have winter coming soon.
Yes,
well,
yes.
It's a place where you can really reflect, and what we reflect on, what our specialty is we reflect on the history of humanity. Now that we've had all this new information that's come out, and so that's what we're going to talk about today. And we're so excited that you're giving us a chance to talk about the Anunnaki, those who came from the sky. What would you like to say to begin?
Well, before you do that, I want to direct everyone's attention. I haven't posted it yet. InkySpeaks.com is one of the websites that will give everyone kind of I think an overview. Plus, I think it does talk about some of the other websites that you guys have. You have a lot. You guys do your own radio shows, and we'll let you guys have plenty of time to talk about anything that you want to share with the audience tonight. Cross promotion is I love it. I just absolutely love it when people do that. The more information we have, I think the better it is for everyone. So that being said, I think what I'd love for you to do real quick, if you will, Sasha, for us, and then Janet, I'd like for you then to follow him, is maybe give just a little bit of a brief kind of background. Sasha, I know that you, Dr. Lesson, I don't know how you want me to address you this evening.
That's good. That's good.
Sasha,
Dr. Lesson.
Okay.
Dr. Lesson will do.
Wonderful.
I did my PhD from UCLA, and I worked so hard for that, and I just absolutely love it when people call me Dr. Lesson.
And rightfully so. And maybe you can tell people a little bit about what your PhD is in. And
my PhD is in
expands.
anthropology, the study of humanity. And I'm in a particular branch of anthropology called ethnology. That means old guys like me, I'm 73, sort of reflect on, hey, what's come down in terms of our current information, and let's review everything and see where we're at. And what is totally amazing is we can now see that we've been programmed to fight one another and kill one another by people who came in their rocket ships to get gold. And in the course of that, they created an adapted version of themselves, their genome. They added a few proto-Neanderthal, from that Bigfoot genes, and a little copper and a little bit of clay, and they made this slave race. That's us. We are them. And then they have all kinds of things. They almost let us drown in the deluge, and they nuked each other, and a nuclear cloud just wiped out most of their civilization, etc. And most of them left. Not all of them left. And but the model they left us and the people they left in charge are the ones that are just keeping us divided and not feeling our common ancestry by these people that didn't respect our consciousness as much as they might. But fortunately, one of their number, Thoth, basically said he was coming back on December 21st, 2012, and he was bringing with him 9 other Nibirans, including his father, Enki, and who was going. And so many people have been telling us that they actually can experience something has drastically changed, our timeline has changed, or something did indeed happen. And so I guess we put that to everybody who's listening. Did the world change? Are we in a positive timeline? Is Syria not going to be the cause of war, but perhaps the stimulus to create a framework for world peace? Or who knows? Maybe we're on a positive timeline. I guess, Janet, what do you think about that?
I vote for the positive timeline. I think we are experiencing something positive. I've been having these altered states, transformative. I don't know what it is. We're here in the matrix here. I mean, in the vortex here in Maui. So I'm very sensitive to the energies, and it's very palpable. I'm going, what in the world is going on? I can feel it. But everybody, at least in our circle, we're involved with in Maui we have a lot of New Age people, and they're talking about there's an energy that's happening. And even though we have talks of war, but something positive is coming about. What are you getting, Rebecca?
Well, first of all, let me address the timeline things. I've actually had quite a few shows on this whole timeline idea, and of course, 2012 was really busy with the different timelines and the energies as we approached the galactic center was extreme in nature, and then it was like this time of, and I call it the time of quiet right after the whole idea behind the 21st of December. I was actually in Egypt at that time. Pretty interesting experiences there, and a lot of experiences, truly a lot. And I've actually done a few. I've been interviewed a few times because of some of the information that came through when I was there. And there was this, I called it the quiet time. It was like several weeks where it was like I don't know. It's very difficult to explain. Some people say it was like feeling like somebody was holding their breath. I didn't get that anticipation. I got the more of the, now we can all breathe again kind of a feeling. And it was like the quiet before we had to get up and start getting busy again. And so these timelines, I think, are still in this kind of convergent state. They're kind of bumping up on each other, and consciousness of the planet, of humanity, is changing. It's kind of like a leapfrog effect, as it were. Sometimes I think, well, we've dropped back into a negative time space, but most of the time I feel like the timeline that we're on is one of great strength and fortitude for humanity, and that the consciousness of the people are really being awakened at a very, very rapid pace now, more so than even before the event of the 21st of December. So that tells me that the energetics out there, something has shifted and changed. For me, it's very positive. Of course, there's a lot of naysayers out there. I'm sure you guys get that as well, because people are looking at all the negatives, the things with Syria. But when we look at all of this, we're also seeing that's coming out of these news items, people's reaction to them, and people are getting more, I guess the way I want to say it kind of in a slang way is they're getting more real. They're going, really? Does that make any logical sense what you just said? And they're really beginning to explore and speak out, and people are really beginning to speak out more about what they know is not correct and accurate for humanity.
Right.
And to me, that's positive, even if it's going to cause disruption. Obviously, they've been in, this negative space that we've been in for eons and eons of time. They're not going to go quietly.
No.
At least my opinion, they're not.
Right. I agree totally. And so I had a fellow that told me that right now he can just look at people like across the room in a grocery store, and they'll come up and they'll say, "Did you get that?" And he'll go, "What?" He says, I just shifted. Like there's something happening with the people that are awake, that are even in the same room with the people that aren't awake, and it's an awakening process. And so he was saying all these different reports about, he was way beyond random probability, because they were just coming up to him and they said, something about being in your energy. And he wasn't saying it's anything about me. It's just that he's been on a consciousness path. So anyway, I digress. It might be good to go back and get how this all began. And, Rebecca, I'll let you're the host, but Sasha's really good at summarizing how we got from here to there. Or how we got from there to here, I should say.
So,
Rebecca, you have a question before?
No, I love what you're doing. Absolutely. Listen, run with it. This is your guys' time.
okay.
Go ahead, Sash.
So, it's this story, and this story, incidentally, can be corroborated. We have extensive evidence that the things I'm going to tell you will lead to predictions about what the Earth and the planets are composed of, and it's built into the story that the people of ancient Sumer 6,000 years ago wrote, that was dictated to them by these great big guys. They called them the gods. They were great big guys like you and me, but way bigger. But they were great big guys just like you and me. But you and me, we are adapted versions, little adapted versions of them that they made to work in their gold mines and their farms and their armies and their brothels. And we were this slave race. And when they got enough gold and they were ready to go back to their planet Nibiru, they were going to let us drown. But one of their number, a fellow named Enki, and with a little help from some higher galactic forms called Galzu. We'll go into what that is, but some higher force was able to get to Enki and give him a computer program how to make a submersible. And Enki's son, which was a half-breed named Noah to you guys, but it was Zarathustra to us, and his people survived the deluge, and these Nibirans decided to rule the earth through the sons of Noah. And then one of them, Nannar, developed this clever system of credit and decided this was another effective way to bind people into servitude. And they got into wars with each other, used us as armies, and we were massacred by the millions. And then they were ready to leave. They just left us after a terrible nuclear cloud that they made that rolled over their civilization.
Yeah, that was Sodom and Gomorrah.
And Sinai. And so these people, the model they had back in their planet was a military dictatorship with a king. And they degraded women. Men had all the power. And it was a unified planet, but it was really militaristic. And we were just conditioned to watching these guys kill each other and have the armies kill each other, and they use nukes and chemical weapons and everything. And so there's the model that's built in. And then two of their numbers, Marduk, who becomes Allah, and Yahweh, who was Enlil, the commander, are still have these organizations that are part of what's running the world today. But
they're the Illuminati.
Yeah. And so then there's some of these Nibirans who never left. They're still here with, and influencing what's going on. And we can see that the religions of the world are like cargo cults asking these gods to come back, but they weren't gods. They were petty, murderous guys. Their basic society was based on kill to rule. Whoever kills the other guy. And so look at our kings. Look at the heads of state. These are genocidal murderers. It's like so obvious. And so what we have got to teach these ETs is that we have compassion, that we care about each other and the consciousness of everybody here. And we don't take this bullshit about women being inferior. Gosh, we need all of us. We need all of our lights. What do you think, Janet?
Well, I noticed that you skipped the how we were created. So if you want to go back and how did the Adam and Eve, and we called them Adapa, and go ahead and tell that whole story and why were we created? What's the purpose?
So about 300,000 years ago, they had these Nibirans were just mining the gold in Africa, in Zimbabwe area themselves. They brought over a bunch of miners.
And why did they do that again, honey?
They were getting gold, and they would just ship the gold back along the coast of Africa, the east coast of Africa, to their where they would transship it to Mars base and then fly it to Nibiru, where they turned it into fine powder, which they were using to seed their environment and cover their environment with this sort of floating gold powder, so that they wouldn't lose their atmosphere as they passed through space. They only come through the inner solar system once every 3,600 Earth years. And so they were shipping all this gold, and the Nibirans, who were down in the mines for months at a time, were just rebelling. They just absolutely could not stand eating dirt anymore. And they said, we're not animals, we can't do it. And so Enki saw what was happening. He said, I'll help you get out of here. And he had a plan. And so Enki got the miners to stop sending gold. And so Enlil, the commander, sent his son, the champion, Nannar, what's going on here? And hey, Dad, you better get down here. These miners are really up in arms. You better talk some sense to them. So the boss comes in, Commander Enlil comes in. The miners surround them, and they make a fire, and they take their their axes, their hand axes and pickaxes, and they're threatening the commander. And ta-da-da! Enki says, "Wait a minute! I got an idea." And he'd already planned this out. I can make an adapted human. They'll be like us. We need a little of these Neanderthal genes. The proto-Neanderthal was the Sasquatch. Homo erectus was his name. But anyway, we'll take a little Homo erectus genes, but basically it'll be our genome. And we'll just make a disposable short-term slave race to work our minds, and we can get all these guys that are mutinying to just give them more responsible jobs. They are, after all, Nibirans. They're human beings. And so that was the deal. That's how we got started. And for a while that worked okay. But at some point, these guys that were running the show, mostly men, there was only like a few women, like 17 Nibiran women to start with. They started breeding with all these girls, and especially Enki. He had lots and lots of children, and one of them was Noah. But that's another story.
That was the first problem, reaction, solution situation. I
love that. Okay.
Yeah, that was the creation of it. He invented it. Yeah. So what else? Okay, Rebecca, any questions?
Let's start out with, let's back up here a little bit, because you're really pulling out a lot of great information. Now, a lot of this, I'm familiar with, and I absolutely, love this pieces of information here that you guys are giving. Where did you guys decide, or I guess Sasha, maybe you were the one that was doing the research, or what were you, in with him, Janet, doing the research?
Right. We originally started studying with Zecharia Sitchin in the late 90s. We were hanging out with the people who did the Prophets Conference, and they created the first certification program with Zecharia Sitchin. But Dr. Lesson's been an anthropologist and researching these parts and anomalies all of his life, and I've been a UFO researcher and experiencer, which we're going to talk about in a future show. And so when we met in 1997, I gave him a copy of the book called The Gods of Eden. And when he looked at that, he went, "Do you know what this is?" And I go, "Yeah." He goes, "Wow, this explains a lot." And I said, "Well, if you like this one, let's go get Zecharia Sitchin's book." So we've been researching this very actively on a daily basis since about 1997, 98. And Dr. Lesson is a fanatic about anything he does. He does it to the extreme. So he'll get up at 2, 3 in the morning and just start, like you said, he's an ethnographer. Am I using the right term? And
ethnologist. An ethnographer is what I was when I was a young guy. I went out to Fiji and Tonga and lived in the village.
Right. So you're an ethnologist now, and so
puts it all together.
He puts all the information together. So originally Sash was an anthropologist and a psychotherapist, and so I've seen him correlate all the information in it's a psychology field for 20, 30 years. And now he's using that same type of energy to pull in everything on the UFO, exopolitics, disclosure, ancient aliens field. So that kind of brings us to this point, and we're writing a series of books called the Gods No More series. And so we finished Anunnaki Gods No More, the first one, and we're about to release what's it called again?
Legacy of the Gods.
Legacy of the Gods. So that's a little bit of the background, but I've been studying UFOs since the 60s. I started out, I was studying, of course, Gene Roddenberry, he was one of the original whistleblowers that revealed information through his science fiction, like Heinlein, Robert Heinlein and Isaac Asimov back in the 60s and 50s and 60s. They were insiders, but they had to reveal what was going on behind the scenes through science fiction initially. And then Velikovsky came around, and he was talking about the rogue planet that came in and how the solar system was created. And then, of course, Eric von Daniken came in the late 1960s, and I've been studying all this. And I lived in a hot spot, Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, when I was growing up. And it was just a hot spot of activity sightings almost in the summer. I could sleep out every night, if my mom would let me and dad. And, you would see things every single night in the night skies in Pittsburgh. So that was my foundation. Do you want to add anything, Josh, or go ahead?
Well, it's for me, what really startled me in anthropology was a whole number of things that didn't fit by evolutionary theory about how we were supposed to have gotten here via the small accredation of gradual development from a Miocene ape. There was no intermediate. After 140 years of looking, there was no intermediate skeletons, and when we started realizing that the Neanderthal, Homo erectus, was still with us, that was who Bigfoot was all over, and so all these things were coming together. And what really got it for me, because in science we use something which is called Occam's razor, what most parsimoniously, the simplest way accounts for the data. And the Sumerians said these big Nibirans told them stuff about the solar system beyond what naked eyes could see, about the planet Neptune, Uranus, and Pluto, and how the asteroid belt was formed by having the Pacific Basin struck by a moon of Nibiru, their other planet, and knocked the asteroid belt out. So therefore, with things like that, you could say the asteroid belt then would be made of the same stuff as Earth. And so that would give what's called an hypothesis. And so that when we are able to get to the asteroids, lo and behold, it either is or isn't like Earth. And it is like Earth. And it goes on and on like this. Anyone that's studied the modern evidence, we have to let go of the idea of macroevolution. All the species that are around came in the Cenozoic, and no species ever evolved into any others. They locally adapt. They came here. You must utterly realize it had to be some kind of terraforming, and that the introduction of the adapted race, that's us, by the Anunnaki was probably on purpose, and they may have even engineered the extinction of at least the biggest dinosaurs, so it would be safe for us, their big experiment. And they were probably manipulated into doing this by representatives of the galaxy in their plenipotentiary, a guy named Galzu.
So let me say this, is that, oh wow, okay, my little brain's on fire. Well, I've had quite a few sessions, in regards to kind of the, how come we are here and some of the information that I have been given. It's actually in a book that I've never finished, writing, which was the evolutionary kind of premise here of how we came here. And it was all about terraforming. This planet was terraformed, and that's just, I'm going to concur with that, even though I don't have any kind of scientific background, but based on.
Oh, that's wonderful! If you can see it, and listen, when you look at the skeletons, as I have in anthropology, you look at the skeletons, no bone at all in Bigfoot or Neanderthals' body is like us. Their hands come down below their knees. Looks like they have no neck. They don't have a chin like we have. They are really smart animals, and they're still here all over the place, and all the scientists know that, but we know that it had to be terraformers, and it's cool. You converged on that too. That's it. Once there's this truth, it just comes through.
And it does. And we're now beginning to see some more, from the private sector, some of this, scientists and archaeologists and, anthropologists that are coming forward. There's something to be said about this internet and, the ability to communicate with each other across this globe, because pictures and information are now being shared that have always been kept subdued and from the general population. And now these things are becoming more and more available, where they're finding, because a big thing is about people that need this proof. They need proof of what this is, because, obviously our mainstream scientists, are either keeping their mouth shut because they get paid to keep their mouth shut, or they're just being sidetracked and they're not looking. at the reality of it because they're still in their sleep mode or whatever you want to call it. But we're now beginning to see evidence of different civilizations that they said couldn't exist, such as giants and animals and species and things like that. The more we dig, the more we know. And I'll tell you, when I was over in Egypt, the big thing that hit me over there is that we were at this site, and there was 2 buildings that the sand at one time had covered all but the top of this building, and they had excavated and excavated and excavated. And they then excavated to the point where there was 2 buildings literally on top of each other. And both of them were kind of religious type buildings. And they know, because they've done some research there, that there's actually another building underneath it and the potential of another one underneath that. So we've not begun yet to even understand what has actually been hidden from view, and that's been part of the information that I was given. It was called the Great Revealing.
Wow.
Yeah. And
I do.
Go ahead.
Just like that's exactly it. Like one of the things that in my Sumerian studies and things that Sitchin translated for us is that when the chief medical officer Nimma was coming to Earth with 17 nurses or whatever, they stopped it at Mars, and the exiled ex-king of Nibiru, a guy named Alalu, had died there. And before she left Anzu, this other guy in charge of Mars base, they made this gigantic statue at the place we call Sindonia on Mars of the face of Alalu with his eagle helmet pulled back, and that's what it was. And so early pictures that we got from the Japanese, Russian, and the ones pictures that the Russian cosmonaut
right, and the Viking probe that Hoagland had made them look on Mars face,
before they put white off on it. And so anyway, you get that. Those are the kind of predictions of there was bases there, and you start now looking at the old pictures. We see pictures of the bases there. We have travelers that say there is colonies on Mars now and have been for some time.
Hundreds of thousands of years. And the other thing is, I had a early hypnosis session back in the late 80s, early 90s, and when the woman regressed me, I was part of the terraforming team, and I didn't have any concept of terraforming back then. But, so personally, of course there's terraforming, and on some other, kind of past life level or probably higher self level, and I believe that we're multi-dimensional beings having simultaneous incarnations, which we'll talk about, on this show and future shows, that there's a part of me that probably is still terraforming. And if you go into the Dr. Michael Newton information, where he studies life between lives, he shows that we are doing many things simultaneously. Depending on how old our souls are, we can be simultaneously being, a human being and on another planet, having an experience there. And of course, time is not linear in that realm. It's just linear here on the Earth.
That's correct. I've actually had some experiences like that, and the other experiences I've had is like timeline jumping. That's always really fun. And they're slight. They're not like, jumping from one timeline into another timeline and my whole world looks different and I can't operate out of it. It's just slight differences, even the energies feel different. The people feel different. Everything just feels, to me, there's been a few times when it's just like, okay, this is off kilter. This doesn't feel right. And I think that people wake up every day and they go, what a strange day this is, or what an odd day, or I feel weird or different. It's probably because they're on a timeline that maybe not the best for them at the moment. I believe that's how subtle it is, and I think it happens to us daily, if not more frequently than that. When you look at space and you realize that we're running through space and there's all these dimensions that we're in it all at the same time.
Right.
There has to be some cause and effect there, And the more you go through this, the more sensitive you become to it. the more greater the understanding, and also the greater confusion. Obviously, it's not like an easy trek, that's for sure. But yeah,
I have that same type of experiences where, especially coming back from the dream state, I'll come back and I will have gone to a slightly different multiverse than the one I'm in, and there'll be subtle differences, and it's almost like going to Alice in Wonderland. It's like you're looking at something that's out of place. But what's happening for me is I'm coming back elated, like in a total blissed out joy state, and it's like what they talked about, the ascension for 12/21/12, that we're vibrating at a higher level.
Correct.
It's like I've accessed the higher vibratory frequency, and on a personal level, I'm bringing that energy down into this form,
right,
into Janet, who's in third dimensional physicality, and I am excited. And I turned to Sasha the other day, what is going on here? I'm in such a good mood. I'm so excited. You know, we have Fukushima, we have World War III, and I'm excited and happy and joyous. There's something, an overlay coming. At least this is what I'm experiencing, and I think other people are getting it too.
Well, if you go to the very end of it, it's the sort of intuition that many of us have, that we have been protected before, just as either by a nuclear or a laser type or a sonar weapon. There was this huge extinction event for the dinosaurs, or they hurled or directed a hit by Yucatan, a meteorite that killed off these big dinosaurs because they wanted room for us in Gaul's Zoo. The planetary society have asked from the very get-go and manipulated the Nibirans into creating us. What do we have to give the universe? What we have is passion and compassion. Because we embrace both our finitude, we only are here, we're disposable short term, we're so intense. So we have finitude, but we also have infinity because we understand as we become aware how we connect with all levels of consciousness, including source.
So let's talk about Nibiru for a minute, if we can.
Sure.
There was a question that came in kind of early on about, was the last time Nibiru came near Earth 2,000 years ago? Is their next trip into the inner solar system around 3600 AD or CE?
There is so much disagreement about this. Everybody says something different. I'm just a college professor, so all I can do is to tell you what different people are saying. Now, lots of people are saying it's here now. And if you're in the southern hemisphere and you get a camera, you can see it. You can see Nibiru, and it's here now, and it's got its little planetoids and moons going around it, and they're saying in the southern hemisphere, it's here now. Then there's Andy Lloyd, who is in England, and he's
an astronomer. He works with astronomers.
He really knows all about astronomy. He says what's here is a big deal too, but it isn't Nibiru. He says Nibiru is in Delphinius, which is over by Sagittarius, as far from Earth as it ever gets. And what we're going through is the stuff on the pathway of Nibiru, which is called its 180-degree Lagrange point. That's more detail than it probably anyone wants to know. But in this Lagrange point is lots of crap, meteors and comets and pieces of asteroid from where Proto-Earth got hit by the moon of Nibiru. And so all this stuff, the Lagrange point is coming through, and that's bad enough. It's coming through, and it's got stuff that could also cause extinction events. However, it's so apparent that our secret government, probably, but certainly the Nibirans had the technology to deflect something that would extinguish us. We have been protected time and again because the planetary society wants us to survive and join the peaceful contributors to what there is.
And there's the other part of this is some people say, well, why can't we see it? We would see it, but there may be a cloaking device. I forget, one of our guests was saying that the gold they gathered and put up in their shield, in their atmosphere, as well as our gold or whatever they're doing.
They
with
shielded us too.
Yeah, both planets are cloaked so that people can't see what's going on down here. This is an illegal action. We're slaves. Help out there. We're slaves.
But on December 21st, there was a breakthrough, an opportunity for the dimensions to all come through, and the other timelines to be grasped by those that decided for them.
And Sitchin, I think, nobody could pin down Sitchin when he was alive. We would ask him this question all the time. He kind of at the end indicated that he didn't think that Nibiru would return to about 2100 or 2080, something like that.
Yeah, at one point they said it speeded up because last time it passed through, it passed too close to Uranus. And so that made it go faster, so that its orbit was then 3,420 mile Earth years instead of 3,600. And so that changed it to this and that. And so what Sitchin showed us when we were with him is these models where he had things, look, it's not that they're coming in the same plane. And whether it causes any disturbance or not on Earth really depends on how the planes intersect at the time it passes through during this, what it is, something like 80-year possibility when it's easy for them to hop off their planet, spend some time on Earth, and catch their planet on the way back. And so we don't know. But anyway, since we don't know, I advise everybody to have as much fun as they can right now.
So, big controversy. And I'll tell you what, there for a while, Nibiru was a huge topic, especially right around 2008 to 2010. Nibiru was a hot topic. Everyone was talking about Nibiru. And then it kind of died off. And it, the focus became on other things. And then the last probably, since close to the end of last year, it's popped back up into tons and tons of topics and conversations again. And that's always my trigger events. It's like you can feel a trend. There's a rhythm to when things pop up, and it's, just a naturally occurring,
They can't deny it anymore. And part of it is there's this mystery of the Harrington, the head of the Naval Observatory of the United States, that sent some of his underlings down to the observatory that the United States Naval had in Australia, and they confirmed Nibiru, and he called in Sitchin, and they went public saying Nibiru is here and so forth. And then shortly thereafter, Mr. Harrington was killed in a mysterious automobile wreck, and people in our community consistently say that they intuit that he was murdered for blabbing. But the point is that our secret government, the ones that has all the money and is doing things,
all the control
have
power,
the technology to at least do something, or to ask for help from the ETs that they're in regular contact with that do know a heck of a lot more than us.
Right, so you're saying ask for help because we might need to get out of its way or something?
What Neil Freer said to do, Rebecca, and if we could just get everybody to do this, he said, let us all pray for the good ETs to help us.
Right, because prayer is actually telepathic communication.
Stop war.
They can hear that, and we can pray, or we can ask for assistance by typing it on our Facebook pages. Hey, we're here. We know you're here. We're awake. We're conscious. We want some helpful intervention so that we won't have any kind of planet pole shift that's going to cause earthquakes and hurricanes and mass destruction. And what's his name? Nassim Harriman has an image from the Mexican government found and gave it to him, and he had it at one of his conferences, where there is an actual machine, a depiction of a machine that deflected a comet coming in. So we know that the technology exists, that the ancients have it, that the Anunnaki have it, and so there are ways, if there is going to be a pole shift or major planetary destructive
action. But also our
action.
program called HARP has the ability by bouncing a sequence of lasers that are made to go in a a trapezius kind of way, a twister kind of way, and it bounces out the ionosphere, and they can zap places on Earth and cause earthquakes and tidal waves and storms and stuff. So they'll have plans. And if something's going to hit, what we keep hearing is that the elite have these incredible bunkers to survive if a nuclear war breaks out, or all this sort of stuff.
And I know they have them because I was in one, but we'll save that for next show.
Okay, so let's do this. I have two questions that come in, and I forgot to remind you guys that at the top of the hour we take a short break. So we do have a break in the action here, coming up in like less than 10 minutes. So let's see what we've got here with these questions. The first one that came in is from B, and she writes, my big question is, did the human form come from here or somewhere else? Or is this true that genetic modification of a Neanderthal or other progenitor of the human form? So basically what she's asking is, were we just made from the stuff that was here, or did we come from somewhere else?
Sash, take it away.
We came from somewhere else. But you're so right on understanding, you're just right close to what it is. We are human beings. The Nibiru geneticists who created us took their genome. They're like us. And they wanted to make an adapted, short-term slave that could work their minds. And they took some genes from the Bigfoot that was around in those days. That Bigfoot was a different creature. It was Homo erectus, but didn't have any neck and didn't have any chin, and his hands came down below his knees, and there's no bone in Bigfoot or Homo erectus's body that's anything like ours. We are them. We are the Nibirans, but we have some of these genes, plus they put copper in, plus they put clay in to make our prototype, and they carried us in their wombs, these Nibiran nurses, and then they started having babies with the pretty girls each generation and each generation and each generation until we come down to Noah, whose sons were supposed to rule Earth for these gods, and who knows? We could go into it, but they may still be doing so to this.
So the seed of life comes through the cosmos, and we're constantly being bombarded with the seeds of life, basic substance, and then that grows, evolves over time, and then there's always intervention. These extraterrestrials come in and they do their experiments all through time, that we have evidence, or at least it looks like they've been coming for billions of years.
That's right. No species has ever evolved into any other species. That is not what happens. They're placed here whole and complete. They were developed elsewhere.
Humanoids are common throughout the universe, probably.
The geneticists also experimented. They made minotaurs and centaurs and mermaids and chimeras, and they did all kinds of experiments. And we do interbreed with Neanderthal, with Bigfoot. Just look at the line at USC.
No, there's the Alma in Russia
I'm from UCLA.
In 1840s. The Alma was captured, and she gave birth to 6 children from human men.
Yeah, so that's a really interesting thing. The Bigfoot. There was a Bigfoot girl. Her name was Xana, and Xana was captured by the Russians in this village, and there's a whole slave trade in guys that would sell these, and they were really cruel to her until they broke her spirit, and then finally she became the village slave, and she had 8 babies. She killed the first 4 by bathing them when they were born because she didn't understand, but she had these babies by the Russian guys there, and then her babies, the next 4 kids, 4 boys survived, and they married Russian women, and they had kids, and so they interbreed. So we know. And she was so well documented by scientists and so forth. So that was one of these Neanderthals. when they're with us, they breed. Okay. On the other hand, there was this guy up in Washington State, and he was camping, and suddenly he finds himself in this bag, and he's being carried, and all his stuff in the bag with him. He can barely breathe until he gets to the lair of this great big Bigfoot, who then feeds him and tries to tame him and have him join his happy little family, and he finally escapes. And so Bigfoot's been reported all over, and we can show Bigfoot very clearly is what Homo erectus evolved as. We are not, as your caller says, mostly local and partly ET. We are ET and just a witty bit local. But I got to tell you something about erectus. You know what made Enki so interested in erectus in the very first place is that erectus was a compassionate, a compassionate animal. The Nibirans had never seen this Homo erectus was letting animals out of their traps all the time. He cared about the feelings of these other animals, and that blew their minds because they were so cold, and that's part of living forever, or virtually forever that they did. They just weren't very emotional, and then they saw Homo erectus, and so maybe that's what we of Gaia have to offer to these Nibirans. Yeah, we're adapted, but those few genes that you slipped us from our Bigfoot friends, hey, we dig it. We're from this planet, and so we care about how every consciousness shines, and we want them all to shine. And we don't believe in hierarchy, and we don't believe in killing. And this is our planet, and we can teach you a thing or two, I think. Give us the technology we need.
I think we could teach them a lot, actually. And, honestly, with some of the shows that I've done, we've talked about that. We many shows on this topic of consciousness and what this life experience really is. And, time and time again, I've been told is that, we're the brave ones for sticking around, first of all. And second of all, for raising our vibration no matter what they do. And that was the thing that they did not understand about the human being that they created here, was the spirit, the will, the fortitude, the love and the compassion that we have was not something that they recognized or even fathomed when that creation began. And so, and there we are. We're at the top of the hour. So what we're going to do is, we're going to take a short break. You guys, please don't go anywhere. We have Dr. Lesson and Janet Lesson coming back right here on Journeys with Rebecca. So stay with me. Welcome back, everyone. You are listening to Journeys with Rebecca, and welcome again to Friday Night Show. Tonight being Friday the 13th. What a fantastic night it is here in the heart of America and across the globe. Tonight, my wonderful guests are Dr. Lesson and Janet Lesson, and we are here talking about the Anunnaki. It's been a fantastic conversation, and we answered one of the questions, and another question came in, and I'm going to read the question, and we'll discuss it briefly. This one was by Greenheart. Has asked Janet and Dr. Sasha Lesson if they've heard of the book DNA in the Sands of Time. It puts forth a claim that the Nephilim Anunnaki are a 36-strand DNA race, and that they made humans by crossbreeding Homo erectus or Sasquatch, who has 12-strand DNA, with the Nephilim to create us. Now, Janet responded back during the break and said that they had not read that book. And I have not read that book, so we can't really speak to that. And it is the first time, however, that I have heard of a 36-strand DNA race. However, in the grand scope of things, it wouldn't surprise me that there could be 36 strands. There could be some, I guess, that have 100 strands. I mean, we just don't know. I don't know, and that's a good question, though, in regards to that. And it is one of those that I will think on, and perhaps there'll be a show in the near future in regards to that book and that piece of information. But I want to welcome back Dr. Lesson and Janet to the show. Welcome back, guys.
Oh, thank you. I do want to say that there is so much Anunnaki or Nibiran blood in us because partly it's the mitochondrial DNA from the wombs that carried us, and the wombs were the wombs of Chief Medical Officer Nimma, and she's really the mother of humanity, one of the geneticists that created us, and Damkina, who also carried some of the prototypes in her womb, and 12 other volunteer female medical officers who carried a sequence of these experimental workers adapted in Nibirans. That's us until they got the one that worked, us, and then it got better and better from their concern. And see, they are so concerned with bloodlines. They still think to this day that bloodlines that are more closely associated with them are somehow better than and should have more say. That's our current royalty than ordinary people. And they're missing because they're so utterly confined to hierarchy and status up and down, usmanship with each other, that they don't even know they're doing that. Most of them are incapable of empathy and consensus.
We do know that they originally the first generations of humans were mules. They couldn't reproduce, so they had to go in and further alter them so they were able to procreate. And that's the story of the fall from the apple. That's all that was about. Was
yeah.
They created so they could breed.
But see, the leader of the Enki's son, the half breed, who really he said, "Hey, I don't want to die. I'm seeing people die. These guys never die." His name was Adapa, actually.
Oh, Adapa, yeah, Adapa.
He said, "I don't want to die. Dad, look, I know you programmed us to be short term." Adapa was a genius. But let me, Enki, Papa, let me go back to Nibiru with your other sons. King Anu wants to know about me and see how smart I am, and I am smart. And maybe he can give me, I'd like to live forever like you do, Pop. And so, Dumuzi and Ningishita, those are the two pure Nibirans.
Sons of Enki.
The sons of Enki. They took their brother, but he was part a human, Adapa, back to Nibiru. And Ningishita slipped a tablet to King Anu, and it said, "Hey, Dad, this is my son, but don't let them live forever, because if you do, they'll breed into millions, and we'll be overwhelmed, and that'll be the end of our expedition. So don't give them long life." And I told him to deny it, even though you offer it. Anyway, so it goes on. But you see that we have been denied our heritage, but we are capable, and our genes are becoming awake to the fact. And I think ultimately that's what a listener might be feeling, is that there's something getting activated in us, however we may symbol it. There's something happening where our higher wisdom, where our spiritual selves, where our connection with Source and compassion for the consciousness of everything and everybody.
You are listening to Journeys with
We don't need royalty. We don't need racism. We don't need money. We don't need wars. What we need is the ability for people to just respect each other's consciousness.
So I just wanted to add that they did at some point shorten our life expectancy. We originally lived much longer, closer to 600 to 1,000 years. Noah was 900 or something, Methuselah over 1,000.
They gave Noah eternal life, honey.
Noah they gave, who was it? Adam. Adam lived to be 900, that's right. And then, let's see, the other thing, the Anunnaki are savants. They use 100% of their brains. So we've been dummied down, and some of our abilities, which might be things like telekinesis and telepathy, have been turned off genetically in our DNA. And the other thing I wanted to add is that our line is unbroken. Sir Lawrence Gardner had access to all the these incredible libraries in the UK and the Scottish and British Isles, and he got in there, and the these libraries are about 1,000 years old, and he was able to research the line, and it is totally unbroken, going back through Jesus all the way to the Anunnaki. So we are definitely Anunnaki. The kings and royals were an unbroken line going back to the Anunnaki and the pharaohs and everything.
Well, what happened was that one of the foremen that had sons of Noah, named Terah, was in a place called Ur, and Enlil, or Yahweh, chose his son Abraham to be his number one general in the war against Marduk, the son of Enki. And Abraham wound up spying for Yahweh and told him, or Enlil told him, if Sodom and Gomorrah has gone over to Marduk, you better bomb them too. And they decided they were going to bomb the spaceport and the cities of Canaan, where the Dead Sea, it was the Salt Sea, but it became the Dead Sea, and that would put an end to Marduk's forces, and they bombed it. But the problem was it caused a radioactive fallout cloud that blew all over all of Sumer, Iraq, but miraculously missed Marduk's place in Babylon, which is a bit to the north. And so Enlil, the commander, said, let's get out of here. Let's go to our spaceport on top of the Andes. That's at Tiwanaku, and get off the planet and let Marduk have the darn thing. Well, most of the Anunnaki started in the next 600 years or so cycling off the planet. They had plenty of gold and stuff. But some of them stayed, and they're still pitting their humans against the other gods' humans, but they're not gods. And that's what our work is teaching people. These people are not gods. There's such variety of characters here, but there's some very specific, Nimma, Enki, and Ningishita, who have been committed by a higher power called Galzu to make sure that we're nurtured and that we don't perish.
Yeah, that humans don't perish. So war was also a concept that was introduced to human beings. There was a point in the evolution of the Anunnaki themselves, because they almost extincted themselves through nuclear holocaust on their home planet Nibiru, that they had evolved to resolving their conflicts by wrestling. So say they would have a conflict over like who would rule the planet, they'd send their two top contenders and they would wrestle, and the one who won the wrestling match was King of Nibiru.
And this tended to usually work, except the problem with this guy Alalu, I told you before, that died on Mars. He was a sore loser, and after the other guy won the kingship for the second time by wrestling and putting his foot on the guy's chest and saying, now I'm king, it's all settled, this guy Alalu jumped up and bit off Anu's penis. And so that's why he was sentenced to die up on Mars.
I don't think you're allowed to say that word, honey.
His manhood.
Erases.
You're not allowed to use descriptive words.
No, you can't use that word on Revolution Radio. Sorry.
Oh.
Our apologies. Okay. So anyway, they had become more civilized, and there were certain individuals that were kind of digressed, but there was something about the planet Earth. You think about the Earth, animals kill each other, they eat each other. So the Earth itself has its own violent influence, and so when the Anunnaki came here, they had come to this more civilized level, but they devolved as well, and their children that were born here, and the younger ones especially, who were were more malleable, and they were influenced by something here on the Earth, and they started to war with each other. So the grandchild, Inanna, you've all heard of Inanna. She was the grandchild of Enlil and the great-grandchild of Anu. Anu was the king of Nibiru. Yeah. She and Marduk, they're all related to each other. So Marduk was the son of Enki. So we have the Enki clan and the Enlil clan. And so the one from each clan, they started to war with each other because Inanna fell in love with Dumuzi. She was going to marry him, and somehow Marduk created this accident, and Dumuzi died.
Yeah, he got his sister to have intercourse with her, and then she called rape, and then he sent his guys out to catch him, and he got killed trying to escape.
So basically, we're in this war right now that started over these two characters, Inanna and Marduk, and Inanna probably is still influencing the planet because her symbol is the owl, the owl at the Bohemian Grove, and she's also the Statue of Liberty. So if we trace it down through the modern era to the Illuminati, Inanna is still here doing something. And also Marduk, he won the war, he won the battle, and they left the planet to Marduk. But also, Enlil doesn't like human beings that much. Every time there was a chance to wipe us out or to, limit our numbers, he was behind the actions. He felt threatened. It's kind of like the Planet of the Apes. He thought we were breeding too much too fast, and we were. There's billions of human beings, and there's probably only a couple thousand, maybe 10,000 Anunnaki that are still left. You have to realize it's only been a year for them. Their year is 3,600 years. We're talking about the recent 4,000 years of human history where all this stuff happened. It's only been a year for them.
Okay, but 450,000 years ago, even though they had a unitary government, there was a war. Alalu got everybody all pissed off, and they stormed the king's palace, and finally Alalu was had cornered King Lama, who is the king of Nibiru, and threw him off of the tower and became king by murder. And so they came to this planet, and that's actually the basis of this whole thing. The rightful heir to Alamu was a guy named Anu. And what Alalu said, I'm king now, and if you don't cause a civil war by demanding the crown, I'll marry my daughter to your son Enki, and their kid can then succeed me as king. Would you agree to that? And so Anu said yes. Well, so Enki did indeed marry the daughter of Alalu, Damkina, and their child was Marduk, who thought, and it was true, he was the successor to the crown. But alas for Marduk, in 9 shars,
which is a 3,600-year rotation,
nothing happened. And now, what happened? Alalu tried to nuke the volcanoes to make dust. That didn't work. He sent a probe to Earth, but it got hit by an asteroid and everybody got killed. 50 people got killed on that thing. So he was not doing a good job. Anu overthrew Alalu, and Alalu stole a rocket ship that had nuclear weapons on it, from which they had been bombing the volcanoes, left over from their North-South war, and Alalu blasted to Earth, and then he aimed the missiles at Nibiru, and he said, I found gold here, and I got missiles at you, and I want my crown back. And so that's how it came to be that Anu came to Earth and wrestled again with Alalu, and had his lingam injured.
Yes. Those people are tantric. It's a lingam.
Yeah. Oh my goodness. Well, we have a ton of questions that came in, so let's try this one. This one comes from Studio B. Has the doctor heard about artifacts hidden in the paw of the Sphinx in Egypt that will give us more insight about who we are, and why doesn't anyone go get it? I'll respond to that after you're done speaking.
Oh yes, absolutely. They once found one of there's all kinds of tunnels that go way under there. There were some Arabs that went in this one that they followed like 175 feet. There were stones that glowed under there. There's all kinds of tunnels under all this stuff, and there's all kinds of things. Thoth, just before the deluge, made these 2 great big pillars with all the wisdom that there was, and he hid them somewhere. And this was in his area of Egypt. There's stuff. Yes. Put up a comment of everything you know. I want to learn more about this too. But there's stuff there.
But why doesn't anyone go in there? Well,
Egyptians.
The Egyptians control it, and we have no control. And from my channeled information, and also reading the Lost Book of Thought, what it was called, Emerald Tablets of Thought, he talks about having found the halls of Amenti, the portal to the halls of Amenti, which is the realm where the Galzu live. And actually, if you start going downward under the Sphinx into the paw, down that, I think it's the right one, the deeper you go into the ground, it actually goes interdimensional, and that's where you find the interdimensional beings, the Galzu, who are from a higher vibratory frequency. And they can basically change their form at will. They can be solid, they can be light beings, they can be in the molecular structure. And they gave thought he became an initiate, and he studied with them, and eventually learned how to manipulate his own form through his own mind, and the only thing that's holding our bodies together is our own consciousness, our own mind. And so he was traveling throughout the universe, and when he returned back and they said, okay, now you've succeeded and you are one of us, what will you do that you are now enlightened? And he said, they said, what's your work? What's your work in the world? And he says, I'm here to help humanity evolve and become conscious and enlightened, just like I am now. So he's dedicated to our evolution, and so that's part of what's in there. What did you have, Rebecca? You had some insight?
I did. As I stated to you guys to the audience when we first started the show, I was in Egypt.
Oh yeah, you were there.
In 2012, right around December 21st. And I was getting nightly I was having nightly experiences, and one of the experiences was, and this is very interesting because it'll corroborate what this gentleman was talking about too a little bit, and what you guys are also talking about right now, is that there was a being, a tall being that showed up, and he said, quickly, you must come. And what he did was he did something with his hand, and like this, door opened up into the Sphinx from the paw. And we all descended down into there. When I say we, there was some of the group that I was with was also there on this trip. And we went down these stairs and went through this labyrinth of hallways. We ended up in them, and we were really deep underground. We ended up in this place. It was kind of like an intersection. When I looked around, there were hallways that ran every which way. And we were kind of in this intersection where this is a big space. And there was like this, I want to call it, we would look at it as maybe a podium. It must have been more like a pedestal, but it felt like to me that there was something missing, that there was something that was supposed to be on there. But anyway, this guide was talking to me, and as I was looking up and down the hallway, on the walls, and I don't have the correct terminology because I'm still in this third dimensional world, but for the lack of a better way of explaining it, there were plaques all up and down these walls, and they were representation of knowledge and information from all the galactic beings that were part.
Yes.
Yes, and so I was looking at some of them, and we were beginning to study them, and then all of a sudden the guide said, "They know we're here. We must hurry and leave now." And so with that, we all left, and we went back out the way that we came. And so I didn't get to study them, but that will corroborate a little bit about what you have just been saying as well.
That's wonderful, Rebecca. That's utterly wonderful, because that means that you, if you go in a deep state, can go back there astrally. You know where it is. And so next time that you go into a deep meditative space, it would be really interesting to let yourself go back there and be there and notice what happens.
Yes, I would absolutely love that. I seriously would love that. As a matter of fact, I got a bunch of stories to tell you guys. Maybe we can plan something for next week before you get on the show again, and we can get together before next week's show and do some more cross notes and see what we come up with. It'd be fantastic.
That's great.
Yeah. Here's another question for you guys. Let's see here. And I wanted just to also talk about why doesn't anyone go get it? And you guys were absolutely right on. When you're over in Egypt, it's way different than what you think it is. They've been trained very well. I mean, I was standing there. I'm from the United States. I'm not, from some other country, and I'm standing there at one of the places, and some soldier guy was standing behind me with, an AK-47 slung over his shoulder, and I was like, okay, well, I'm not in Kansas anymore.
Right.
One of the things that they wanted to attribute the Great Pyramid and the Sphinx to pharaohs that came so much later than these things were built, and the Egyptians hated that the Sumerian civilization was developed way before Nile civilization, and the same gods, Enki, this is when there was a division, Enki got Africa, Enki and his sons, Thoth, and Ra, or Marduk, basically, and Gibel and these other sons basically took over, Africa, and that's the division.
Well, Thoth is the architect of the pyramid,
and
the architect of the whole
way later. He had all the stuff under there. They used it as a place to generate energy. They were able to tap the energy of the earth, and they used it adding hydrogen chloride and potassium chloride to make basically hydrogen gas in a microwave that they picked up, and they lit up their cities using the kind of monoliths you see all over the old world. And they had a big thing going, but they want to hide the true history of humanity because it shows that the stories about Allah and the stories about Yahweh are stories about these cold-blooded, murderous guys from the planet Nibiru, and they're not gods. They're just maniacs.
Well, Tellinger also is working with the stone rings down in South Africa, and he says that they line up with the pyramids. It's all part of a universal grid. They had a power grid just like we have a power grid, although theirs was more energy efficient and didn't use fossil fuels that's killing the planet.
That's right. So, that's exactly right. And Michael was one of them that was on the trip with us, so.
He's wonderful.
Oh yeah, he is. He's a great guy. He came to Kansas City, and he actually, I took him around, and that's how I first got to know him about 4 years ago. So he's just a hoot. We had a great time. Let's move on to the next question here. Hang on, I scrolled down here. Does the Christ figure have anything to do with the Anunnaki?
Okay, Sash, you want to go first, and then I'll do my
Your
theory.
background is Christian, so go ahead, Janet.
I have a theory that I think that God, Enki, fathered Jesus, the body, but the soul might be Dumuzi. It could be another. It might be Dumuzi came through. See, Dumuzi died, and they had the ability to do resurrection and transmigration of souls. The Anunnaki had that ability. So Jesus, of course, knew how to raise the dead. And of the Anunnaki, Enki was the one that had that knowledge. I don't think he shared it with Enlil's clan, but they may have gotten it later. And also, Jesus' philosophy was about, kindness, love, and oneness. And, he was supportive of humanity. And so that's the philosophy of the Enkiites, not the Enlilites. So I think the Son of God was Enki. And, of course, during the the baptism, I think Enki came down and kind of came along for the ride, wanted to experience what it was like being human, and probably you could have more than one soul cohabit. Maybe he stayed there 24/7. Maybe he came in and out. But that's why on the cross Jesus said, my father, why have you forsaken me?" There's a whole story about it didn't really die. It was a fake death. And of course I'm following that he didn't die, that he married Mary Magdalene, that he, either went to India or went to
Marseille.
We're kind of leaning towards he went to Marseille.
He had gone to India earlier, before he came to Jerusalem,
right.
And he made the upper caste really pissed at him because he was hanging out with the lower caste and saying, this isn't right to put yourself above everybody. And so he really made everybody mad at him there before they came to Jerusalem and said the same thing. And basically he was preaching this egalitarian love that just infuriated Yahweh.
And the RH negative is that lineage. And I am RH negative, O negative. So I am on the lineage.
And so Jesus and Mary moved to Marseille, and they formed a big clan of people, and they intermarried with the kings, the Merovingian kings in southern France there, and eventually the other royal lines all kept trying to, Charlemagne's line finally forged another kind of an alliance, and they formed the royalty, the Windsors, and the people that are controlling the earth to this day through their intermediaries. But it's just nonsense that just because their genetics are closer to a certain line, that they're better than anybody else. That's the ultimate racism.
Right. So it's just a lineage, and apparently Elizabeth, that line, well, they were the German, the Hanovers, and so that's why they married Princess Di, who was descended from both Jesus and James, Jesus' brother James. And so now the children, the new grandchild, great-grandchild, has the Jesus bloodline. And that was the original intention of Enki, was to create the priesthood and the kingship, because he loved humanity, and everything gets twisted. The religions get co-opted.
Yeah, the Grail's supposed to be the bloodline.
Because he lost the war. And that's why I think that Enlil is in charge. I think that, that's his mindset, is to think of humanity as a second-class citizen, as slaves. But and that's not the Enki clan.
Hermes, basically
Hermes.
top, is known as Kukulkan in the Mayan area.
And the
Quetzalcoatl in the central Mexico area, who left the Mayan area a few thousand years before Jesus' birth and said, I'm coming back, and I'm going to bring 9 of my colleagues with me, and we are going to fight the forces of disrespect for consciousness.
Well, that's the other thing, is that Thoth, in the Emerald Tablets of Thoth, he says that he put his body in stasis, and he came back through the womb, through the birth process, as the thrice-born Hermes. So we know that they had that ability, and I think they were curious, what is it like being one of these human beings? So they come through this birth
Leonardo
process.
There's been a whole series of enlightened masters like Leonardo.
Some of these enlightened people that walked might have been, and I suspect that Enki and Nimma and the Enki clan, some of them come through and experience incarnations. I mean, how can you better help humanity,
Than
you really can't help. You have to be one, right? Walk among us. So they walk among us. So you might be having lunch or dinner with somebody who is Enki, an incarnation, or Thoth, or Inanna. And that's what some people are claiming now. They go, well, I think I was Inanna. Well, they may, and she's not limited to putting one at a time. She can have thousands come in as emanations of her.
Yeah, understand the holographic universe, that everything in the universe is in each of us to some degree, and we're in everything else. And so that you can access, you just notice as you hear these stories of the Anunnaki or the Greek gods or the movie idols, what do you identify with? Is there a part of you that's this warrior goddess, or what is it that's resonating in you? What Anunnaki archetype is active as an inner script? And then none of it's bad. You just need to be able to harness it and use it in an ecological way.
Absolutely. Wow, tons of information. Okay, one more question here. And then we also have one after that from Dave Corso, who is engineering, producing our show tonight. This next question is, what does Nibiru have to do with the Illuminati, and do the reptoids have anything to do with the Nibiruans?
You want to go first, honey?
Okay, sure. So understand there's the different people assemble things. And so when we say, was so-and-so, was George Bush a reptile or not, and stuff like that, there's some interesting ways of looking at it. One of them is that a guy named Sperry, who studied the human brain, said that we all have, we're all partly reptoid or reptilian. And the brain stem is this reptilian part of us, which is absolutely concerned with greed and regulating, and doesn't have any compassion at all, And that operates automatically, and it keeps our salt right, and keeps us breathing right, and digesting and stuff, and it's all we see is about our survival. And then on top of that is something known as the midbrain, and this is the limbic system, and this is where we feel all our emotions, all the passions, our mammalian brain, so to speak, feelings. And then above that brain, there's another two brains, one on the left and the right, and this is our intellect. And between them there's a bridge, our center, and in the very front, if we meditate, there's another part, the spiritual brain. And so we all, every one of us, have this Machiavellian part of us that sees what's in our interest. And if we are a centered person, then we can say, oh, thank you, Machiavellian, I see what's in my interest. How can I meet my needs of what's in my interest in a way that's ecologically sound for the rest of my existence and the people I care about? And so it's okay to have this lizarding kind of thing. Now, are the lizards physically real among people? Certainly people do act callously and greedily. But I've seen the transformation that actually happens. You take a president of the United States, somebody like Jimmy Carter, who's, part of that supposedly power game. And what's he do now? In his spare time, he stops border wars and uses his hands to build houses for poor people. It's like, so we don't need to give up on anybody. We just need to reach the human part of the Illuminati. And these are people that are so rich, and they don't care about our life at one level when they identify with their reptilian part, but they're part of us too. And what we can do is concentratedly say, how can you meet your needs and let us meet ours too? And maybe we can synergize. We've somehow got to turn enmity into an embrace that's synergistic, in my humble opinion.
Okay. And then I have my philosophy. What does the Nibiru have to do with the Illuminati? I think that the Nibirans are the Illuminati, and I think it's the Enlil clan, the part that doesn't really want the survival of humanity, or at least they want to limit us and contribute to depopulation of humanity. And as for the reptilians, I think that reptiles have been here all along. And all these species can be evolved from the smallest form, like a gecko, all the way up to a dinosaur, to a dragon. I think that all the above, all these have existed. Probably one of the passings of Nibiru, a reptile faction went underground and evolved to a bipedal opposing finger being. I think that's part of the when I was a kid, I watched Land of the Lost, and they had the sea stack. And I think
the birds are reptiles.
And birds are reptiles. But I think that's what David Icke is talking about, is these beings. I think they exist. I have actually seen a reptile being, and so I will talk about that, reptilian being, and I'll talk about that next week. And let's see. So I think Thoth talked about in the Emerald Tablets of Thoth that they were coming in interdimensionally and taking over the heads of the council. And so he was able to get rid of them for a time, and he ran them underground. So Thoth talks about them being underground, and he actually closed Atlantis. He closed some portals in Atlantis so they couldn't get up. But Thoth said, I have to warn you, we got rid of them for now, but they are going to come back, so beware. So yeah, and of course, as in our psychotherapy practice, we deal with people that have opened themselves for possessions. We've done exorcisms. There are interdimensionals that can come in, and if you open up yourself and you don't shield yourself properly, or if you're abusing alcohol and some extreme drugs, you'll open up your aura and they'll jump right in and they'll cohabit with you, and people are possessed. So we've worked with that. We've seen it. I've seen people shapeshift, and whoever's possessing them will come through and overlay their form, and they'll act really strange. So there's all that. And the last thing is, and I'll talk about this next week, is that during one of my abduction experiences, I'll call this one, although I've been an experiencer contacting all my life, most of it's been good. I was taken to an underground installation, and there I was taken to see the dragon at the center of the earth. And there was a full-on, just like in the mythology, dragon. So that's what I have to say about that.
Oh, yeah. Say how big the dragon was.
I'm not going to talk about it. It's next week. We're going to say that for next week. It's my teaser.
Oh, we're going to get everyone on their seats. Okay, here we go. This question is from Dave, and he asked if you knew anything about the merfolks, mermaid, mermen, and mere children.
Well, I think that was part of the experiments that Enki had. He and his sister Nannar had a competition about what kind of creatures they could create. Now, Enki, who's also known as Aquarius, is also known as Neptune, is also known as Poseidon, or Sidon, or Soidon. And so he was given rulership, kingship over the seas and all the islands. So he probably created these mer people. He liked playing with DNA, just like our modern scientists are doing it. And so I think that they exist. Like, there's some interesting YouTubes out there. Just Google it and see what you can find. What does he know about them? Do you have anything to add, Sash?
Well, yeah, Cyclops was also Enki's, Sidon's child, his brainchild. These guys were geneticists. They had so much fun. All the weird stuff you see on carvings, they made them.
They were there.
Some of them were awful, like the chimeras that would just terrorize people.
You know, I have to kind of jump in here with that. You know, I call them the mad scientists, and I've actually seen, I'll call it a laboratory because I don't know how it else. Again, I'm using Earth terms to describe something as closely resembling what I witnessed without actually having the true vocabulary of what it was. But I call them the mad scientists, and they exist, off and on this world, and it's like, just because you can doesn't mean you should.
Hey,
and
yeah.
I call them the mad scientists. So all of these beings that they, you know, that we've grown up as learning as myth, right? And if you actually look up what that word means, it's actually not used correctly. The way that because it means, for most of us, it means something that's fictional, made up in our imagination, when in fact the actual term is actually opposite of that. So I think it's pretty fun that everything is really backwards and upside down. But that being said, you know, centaurs, minotaurs, all those things that you guys were, you know, you talk about, you know, these are these geneticists, these scientists, off-worlders who have taken the DNA from different species and created other species from it. Some did not do so well, others did not. And if you look through the history of even our Hollywood movies, the story of Dr. Frankenstein taking body parts to animate another one, and taking another piece of Frankenstein to make a bride, and all of this stuff, where a man can turn into a werewolf. That's a shapeshifter. You begin to see that there's a way bigger story here. This is where the truth is sitting, but they packaged it up to be, because they knew at some point we'd learn the truth, right? So right. They packaged it up and labeled it as fiction, Hollywood, celluloid. It's for entertainment. It's absolutely fascinating.
One of the things that's really amazing is that what's now being done in terms of our secret military, making super soldiers, doing just the way the geneticists made us, adapted to be their slaves. These are making these killer bots. It's really amazing that we are now have reached the level of where we can genetically experiment at the level at which our the guys that made us were experimenting when they created us. Of course, they've gone on further they could, if they chose, give us longevity and protect the planet from destruction by extinction level threats. And so it's imperative that we bring them back to help us. Even Anu, the king of Nibiru, has said, Galzu, the planetary society, has asked us to clean up our act. We need to have peace on Earth and no nukes in space.
Yeah, we're at this point that if we have peace on Earth, if we can prove ourselves, the Federation will come down and we'll have all the techno fixes. We will have our DNA reactivated, our longevity genes turned back on. We'll be out of choice whether we stay in this form, live or die. Our life expectancy is in the 6 digits. It could be in millions of years. That's our natural life expectancy. It's been shut down, dummied down. We were supposed to be given 120 years in the Bible. Well, I don't know anybody that lives to be 120, a few people. So we will get all this back, and all we have to do is behave ourselves and don't participate in the war machine. You know, no more war, no nukes.
And so the function...
Talk about making war illegal. I was just on a group chat with Alfred Weber, who's running for the, the general... in the UN. He's running for an office.
Secretary General
of the
UN. United Nations.
And one of the things that he's going to propose is making war illegal. And so if you participate in an action, that at some point it'll just be like the war crimes of, after the Japanese World War II, is that you will be held personally responsible for your actions in these type of, so that, I digress, but,
well,
so
that
anyway,
right there, doesn't that right there, 20 years ago, nobody would have done that. Look at that, though, the consciousness of this planet, because
you have to understand that the underneath the tendency for violence, the anger, underneath anger is the need for appropriate, assertive action. And when we look at what the terrorists or the fundamentalists in any of these desperate places want, we find out they want, for example, the killers of all the athletes at Munich, when they settled into having families and children, and they were no longer terrorists. And maybe we need to address the needs of all the angry people and their needs to have their consciousness respected and their bodies kept healthy. And they need justice, and women can't be suppressed because that's what's limiting us and keeping us in our stupid legacy of the gods, this matrix of hierarchy and greed and the tricky commerce based on credit that they've imposed upon the world.
Yeah, money is artificial construct imposed upon us. But, think about it. It would cost less to feed, house, clothe, and educate every man, woman, and child on the planet than to run these wars. That's one thing. I mean, that's insanity. We're spending all this money to kill. We could spend all this money to create life and create a better quality life for every single individual alive on this planet. One of the things we're talking about is capping personal wealth. I mean, if you have a cap on personal wealth, and the rest goes back into the pool.
No inheritance.
Yeah, there's all these ideas that are coming out there. We're gonna put this together and maybe do a future show on that. But I want to say one more thing about the geneticists, though. Look at what they're doing at Dulce, and then look at the Frankenburgers and the food we're eating. That's all artificial GMO food. So they're using it to kill us. That's basically murder. 150,000 people a day die on this planet, and most of them are murder. There's a few accidents, but most are being murdered. Aging is a disease. What were you saying? What's that? That lives forever? The lobsters. Lobsters do not. I mean, they can be killed, but they're immortal. They don't age and die. That is our potential, and so.
Well, also the developments that the Anunnaki had reached, and we're just now reaching, is that you can use stem cells from your own body to regenerate an injured tissue. It has to be trained, and even generate an eye in somebody that never could see before. So that we are on the verge of what they already know. We just need a little help.
Well, you go ahead.
Well, let me just interject here. Is that we can do all these things, especially the stem cells. I know a couple of people personally that are actually involved in that. That's what they do, is the stem cell. What happens is that these are privately funded individuals, and then the governments or the officials or whomever it is are coming in and shutting them down because they don't want this information. So those are the controllers or the handlers, if you will. They don't want this stuff yet because they want to control it. And so when they do that, sure, I could go to a hospital and have some stem cell, but who in the hell knows what they're going to be putting in that stem cell stuff besides what is supposed to be in there to do what it's supposed to do. So, and I call this geoengineering, and that's a big thing. There's people waking up to it, looking at all the artificial foods. Monsanto is one of the most hated companies across this globe, except for on the United States, where it is protected by the laws, which I think that's going to change very soon here, actually, once we really look at this.
Oh, they have a monopoly on everything.
Yeah, well, I think the people are really stamping their foot on that, but that's a whole nother show. I don't really want to run out of time. We've only got about probably 7 minutes or so, maybe 8. I'm not sure on the timing when this actually ends. It sometimes changes. And because we got started a little late, I don't really know exactly how long it's going to go. I know that sounds silly, but anyway, I want to make sure that you guys get in the information that you need to tell people about, and maybe give us a little sneak preview. Janet, you've kind of been dropping hints along the way about next week's show. And, of course, Dr. Lesson, anything that you would like to add to that, and, of course, where they can get a hold of your book, et cetera, all that lovely stuff.
Okay, I'll start and then he'll add. Our book that we currently have out is called Anunnaki, Gods No More. It's Anunnaki, Gods No More, Anunnaki, Gods No More. It's available right now on Amazon.com. And the sales have been picking up. I think the subject is, like you said, reaching a new high. People are curious. And these are, there are a lot of aliens that have been interacting with humanity, but these are the ones that are our mom and dad. This is mom and dad. And it's time to read about our mom and dad and who they are, and because they might sit down and have tea with us pretty soon here. Our website is enkispeaks.com, ENKISPEAKS.com. I have a website, kind of a blog called Ninmah.com, which is NINMAH, Ninmah.com, which is the birth mother of humanity. She's the one that is the geneticist that co-created humanity with her brother, Enki, and she also carried the first human fetus in her womb. And there's a wonderful depiction where she says, with my own hands I have created it, and she's holding the baby she just gave birth to out and showing Enki, their wonderful creation. We have a website where we archive all of our radio shows that we do. We're going to have this show on it as well. It's not on every show we've done. We've been doing shows. We've been together 16 years. We've just been doing radio since we hit the ground together, doing everything we can to transform consciousness. That site is called Aquarian Radio, like Aquarius, aquarianradio.com. And there's all kinds of articles, and our new book is coming up, Anunnaki, Legacy of the Gods. It's in the hands of the editor right now. We expect to have it, I would like to get it out by Christmas. That's my goal. Sash, take it away. What do you want to talk about?
I just want you to know that once you understand this material and see how the evidence supports it so strongly, that is the end of Catholicism. That is the end of Orthodox religion. That is the end of Islam. That is the end of conservative Judaism. It's the end of all organized religions, because we will see that these so-called gods in these religions, no matter how much transmogrified into benevolent beings, were petty, cold, Nibirans.
Well, they created the religions as a psychological manipulation. So they anchored it with, we have spirituality. There is a creator of all. The Anunnaki They believed in the creator of all. They knew there was higher power, there's other realms, higher dimensions, there's source, there's universal consciousness that doesn't eliminate it. However, the religions that were created by the Anunnaki are psychological manipulation to keep us locked into war, lack, competition, greed, power struggles. And so if we can take back our planet, take back our spiritual beliefs and anchor with that spiritual belief we feel within each of us, we can go inward and connect all the way to source. We do not need an intermediary to, we don't need a pope, we don't need a priest, we don't need any kind of imam, any kind of spiritual leader. I mean, we could have them, they're nice to have, but we don't need them to connect with source, with God's source. So that's one thing that I'd like to, and so we're just want to encourage everybody to start talking about it. I think the way we can do this, once again, like we said earlier, is pray, meditate, ask for higher guidance, put up protection. You're only inviting in the beings of the light and love from the good side of the force, and help us get through this period, because this has become so perverse that we need an outside intervention. We need the perturbation to come in to help us access this consciousness, and we can do this. This can be like at the end of Star Wars. Remember how everybody's celebrating and dancing? We can have this happy ending for the entire planet. No one left behind.
You can just imagine that you are being beamed up to a wonderful ship, and on the ship they are showing you the possible future of a united Earth where our consciousness is respected. Notice what you see. Notice what's being projected for you. Remember that. And imagine you take a small computer program of that and put it in your heart. And when you think about this program, you can remember your positive image for what Earth could be.
So next week we're going to talk about all these experiencers. There are all these experiencers that are coming forth and telling their stories. And Rebecca, we're going to share some of yours and mine. We'll report. We've been working with, I don't like to call them abductees anymore because it implies victims.
Contactees.
These are contactees and experiencers, and there's so many incredible stories. And then we'll talk about how you can invite contact.
Yeah, remember when you imagine something, and it's okay to deliberately imagine it. That means make image of it. And an image could be thoughts, or it could be voices. It doesn't always have to be pictures. But where are you imaging from? At some level, because this is a holographic universe, you're imaging for what's inside you.
Oh, and that's a beautiful thought, Dr. Lesson, to leave us with. And I want to thank you and Janet for being here, and of course Dave for engineering. Oh, it's been beautiful. I can't wait till next week. You guys have a great evening. Thank you all. Blessings to everyone.
Thank you so much for having us on the show. Aloha from Maui.
Aloha.
Good night, everyone.